Don't move. Hey, couple.
This is an African olive tree, everybody.
And lovely. What a family. We are ready for it.
Well, so should we get started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, people to plant two trees.
Yes?
You will plant this one and then you have the one.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Here,
now,
I
I
can
think
get
you
my hand.
stay on this side.
Senator, just can you face us, please?
It will make your hands dirty.
Yes, of course, you got to get your hands dirty. How do you plant something if your hands aren't
Maybe you
dirty?
hold it there for them to see it first.
You got it. There you go. Okay, ready? There we go. Huh? Look, hands dirty? Poop?
That's good. Yeah. Shovel there.
All right, let's get some dirt. You guys want to help?
Yeah.
All right, come on. Put your hands on. Come on, Blair. Oh, good job, good job. Oh, a little more. Oh. A little more. Oh. That's one more left. Oh. All right, all right. Good job, guys. Very good.
Wonderful.
All right.
So we'll now go and have, yeah, you have to water the tree as a matter of fact.
You want water?
Senator?
Oh, no, the girls got in. I'll stand by. Yeah. Oh, nice job.
Get it out. And,
Oh. Okay, so we got black
other
inside.
phone,
Right here? There you go. Good. All right.
Okay,
That's
very
good.
well. Now we will plant the next tree.
Come on.
say that Senator Obama was able to plant a tree here at Freedom Corner. He wanted the senator to plant this tree and his family to participate in it because this corner represents the long struggle for Kenyans to restore democratic space in this country. And many of us remember that many people died right here, Senator, in this area, especially along the street, as we were trying to reintroduce multi-party political system and a greater democratic space. This process continues, so this site is a constant reminder of the need for us to create a strong democratic country where our people can not only improve their quality of life, but they can live in freedom and peace. So thank you very much to you and your family for joining us in reinforcing our need to continue fighting for democracy and peace, not only here in Kenya, in Africa, but in the whole world.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
Well, what an honor this is to be able to plant a tree with the mother of the Greenbelt movement, a Nobel Prize winner, and a symbol, I think, of hope throughout the continent, but especially here in Kenya. And somebody who also, I think, represents the importance of women in our society. One of the things that I've been hearing when I was in South Africa, as well as here in Kenya, is the degree to which women are still being subject to violence and abuse. Wangari Maathai represents what happens when women are allowed to take their rightful place in the society and are able to use their talents in ways that liberate the entire community and liberate the entire society. So she's one of my heroes. I know that she's a hero to the people of Kenya and to the entire continent as well as the world. And I think the fact that I've had the honor of planting a tree with her is something that I'll remember a long time, as will my children.
Senator, we want also to recognize the U.S. ambassador to Kenya. We have a new ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Ranneberger.
Thank you.
We are very happy to welcome you here at Freedom Corner, Mr. Ambassador, and of course, we are extremely happy to welcome you to Kenya. We have had great relationship with the U.S. Ambassador and the Green Belt movement, especially, and in fact, your colleague who just preceded you has a Green Belt at the Karula Forest, which he has been visiting every other day.
Excellent.
So we are very happy, and we'll be glad to take you there to continue the tradition. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. And everybody, I think, has had an opportunity to meet Michelle, as well as Sasha, that's the small one. Aaliyah, that's the tall one. Akinyi, my niece. Alma, my sister. Roxanne, Maxine, my buddies. and all the people who have accompanied us, who've been part of this wonderful trip. So with that, maybe we'll open it up to any questions that people may have, and then we're going to lunch. And you guys aren't invited.
Does the Greenbelt
Go ahead.
Does the Greenbelt movement have any applicability to the United States? Is there something you can take from this home?
Well, definitely we have been trying to pass this message throughout the world because it is about ordinary citizens taking initiative to do something for the environment. And as we have now tried to make people understand, both as grassroots people but also governments, to understand and appreciate the linkage between sustainable management of resources, good governance, and peace. That these are three pillars for any country that wants to be stable and developed. So we would like to encourage all people all over the world to do something small and not to feel like you have to do great things. Just planting a tree, like the senator has done this morning, like his family has done this morning. That's an act that supports the environment and it can make a lot of difference. Imagine if everybody in the world planted a tree. That would be some several billions of trees, and that would definitely contribute towards curbing the alarming change in climate, the global warming. So little things like that. I've seen the crowd that there are some friends from Japan, and in Japan we have been promoting a campaign that we are also taking to the world called Motainai. And this concept of Motainai is a concept that means let us be grateful for the resources we get from the environment. More democratic space, respect for human rights, and of course, preempt issues that cause conflict and thereby promote peace.
Just one thing I want to add to that, Chris. One of the challenges for Kenya is that because of poverty and the fact that most people are still supporting themselves on basic agriculture and farming, there's a major struggle to balance conservation with people just needing to earn a livelihood. And yet, despite those difficulties, you've got Wangari Maathai and the Greenbelt movement that have been able to show that you can promote sound development in an environmentally friendly way, and in fact that a sustainable strategy is going to make more sense over the long term and bring about more development. It's worth thinking about for us in the United States, where we represent a very small portion of the population and use an enormous amount of the world's resources, where, for example, we only represent 3% of the world's oil reserves, but use 25% of the world's oil. We can't expect countries like Kenya to take the steps that they need to take for sustainable development if wealthy nations who are using much more in terms of resources aren't willing to take some simple steps in the same direction. And I think that that's something that we need to remind ourselves of, whether it's in Kenya or in Brazil with the Amazon or other critical resources around the planet. Wealthy nations have to make a proportionate effort in order to ensure that we maintain the planet that we live on.
Professor, I'm wondering if you could tell us what you think the status is of Kenyan women now in the government, and what is the gulf between the sexes right now?
Well, I must say that the NAC government has the largest number of women so far in parliament. And as you know, we have 2 women cabinet ministers and several assistant ministers. But that's a drop in the ocean because it is about 18 women out of a house of 220. So we have a long way to go. But the challenge lies not only on the men to make space for women, but also on women to believe in themselves and to push themselves forward for elective posts. And for the women, once they believe in themselves, they will be willing to vote for their fellow.
The question is, what role has the wealthy nations played in terms of contributing to overall environmental efforts? I don't think we've made a large enough effort. I think that, in many circumstances, these are difficult questions. There are always going to be questions about how do we balance development, environmental sustainability. My belief is that all of us will actually benefit if we anticipate and promote environmental activities. Because let me give you a very specific example. Let's take the example of climate change. the United States declined to sign Kyoto, the Kyoto Protocol, in part because the perception was, well, China and India are not going to be bound by the Kyoto Protocol, so why should we be involved? My attitude is that even if the Kyoto Protocol wasn't the perfect arrangement, that we should have continued to negotiate, because the United States potentially could generate all sorts of new industries and new jobs, not just in the United States, but also here in places like Kenya, around environmental activities. There's a tremendous potential economic growth that's available. And I think businesses and private sector and investors will invest in environmentally sound technologies if there are regulations in place that say this is something you have to do. The experience in the United States, for example, around the Clean Air Act, we had a lot of problems with pollution and air quality. And the United States government in the early 90s set up what was called the Clean Air Act. And everybody said at the time, oh, this is going to be too expensive. Nobody's going to be able to have factories anymore because we've set up these new rules. And it turned out that not only was it much cheaper than people expected, but whole new industries were developed as a consequence of us being mindful of the issues of the environment. So I think we have to do more, and we have to provide assistance. If, for example, the United States helped develop technologies to use coal more cleanly and extract coal in a more efficient way, then we can export that technology to China and India, or places like Kenya, so that they can also benefit. And we haven't made that investment yet. I think we have to.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. Great to see you.
Idi.
So I just wanted to say thank you for everybody taking the time to come out. I want to say how much I appreciate everybody and all the great welcome that I've received here. Everybody has been wonderful, and I very much appreciate how warm and generous everybody has been in welcoming myself and my family. You know, the last time I came here was in 1991, and coming back, I'm reminded of how wonderful the Kenyan people are, and I'm proud to have a connection with this nation. So all of you who are here, you know, I wish I could spend more time with you, but I just want to let you know how much I appreciate everybody here, and I wish everybody good luck. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Traveling a lot, but it has actually been a wonderful experience here in Castle Business.
My friends,
Yes.
and you know, the last time I was back here was in 1991, and it's been too long. So now this time, there's no way I'm going to wait another 14 years before I come back.
Come back soon.
Okay. Guys, but it's good to see you. Unfortunately, I've got to go back home, but I want to say to everybody, thank you. I appreciate you, and I look forward to coming back soon. Okay, asante sana.
Coming back, please move.
Out of the way, guys. Out of the way, please.
Please move.
Say hello to Bush.
If Obama is a candidate for presidency for Kenya, would you vote for him?
Yes.
100% without opposing.
Yeah.
We won't oppose him.
100%.
We want him to remember the youth. Let him come next election 2007. To have at least 5 Obamas there. Let him come 2007 and we'll vote him without opposing anybody. Yeah.
Next year, 2007, general election. Obama for president.
Excuse me. This way, sir. This way. This way. Hello, excuse me, please. Excuse me, Your Excellency, sir.
Hey, excuse me, madam, what is wrong with you? Ah, come on. Excuse me, excuse me.
See everybody? Which is this camera?
Okay, Janet, Esther, come. Jan. Joyce. Okay, we got our friends from the embassy.
George? Yeah. Hey, that's each one.
Okay, everybody smile.
Please keep your...
Moment of silence in memory of the victims of the bomb blast, including camera shutter sound.
I don't think I need to make a long speech. I just want to say to particularly those who survived the bomb blast who are here today, and the trustees who helped organize this park, the staff, that we appreciate you. As I mentioned when I was at the embassy today, it's nice when a senator comes to a country and he's here for a couple of days. The most important ambassadors for the United States are the staff of the embassies and the outstanding work they do, both Americans who are on the staff and also the Canadian nationals who are on the staff. The tragedy that happened here is a reminder that ultimately all of us suffer from conflict. All of us suffer from terrorism. We have to redouble our resolve, as the memorial says, to find ways to live in peace and to find ways to resolve our conflicts in a way that does not result in this sort of tragedy. So we will not forget what's happened here, and we want to make sure that all of us are vigilant. So thank you again, all of you, for your wonderful work. And, I've heard some of the stories of these survivors. For the press who are here, it's probably more interesting to talk to people like George who survived the ceiling collapsing on top of them and had to jump from effectively a third or fourth story window and then went back into the embassy and pulled another individual out. These are the stories of heroism, and we're here to. Thank you, everybody.
This way first, that way.
Inside, please.
You hear that, Michelle? This is all debris from the actual embassy.
Right.
And then one is chosen to put it here.
Everybody ready?
No, okay. Can I remind everybody, please turn your cell phones off now. This is gonna be a moderated press event. That means I will pick which one of you gets to ask a question. You raise your hand, everybody gets one question. The microphone will be brought to you. Please speak into the microphone. Give the microphone back. The senator will answer the question, and we'll move on to the next person. This is going to end in just under an hour. Thank you.
All right. So how are we doing this? Can I just? Well, okay. I'll make some remarks. First of all, let me just say how heartwarming the wonderful reception has been since my arrival. The people of Kenya have been so warm and so gracious and enthusiastic about my presence here that it's a bit overwhelming, and I really want to say thank you to all of the people of Kenya for the graciousness with which I've been received. I think some of you know that my father was from Kenya, but I did not grow up in Kenya. Did not know my father very well. The first time I came here was in 1987, right after I had finished working as a community organizer in some low-income neighborhoods, and I was about to go to law school, and I came here to visit for a month and stayed with my sister who was teaching at the University of Nairobi. And I told people yesterday that my first visit, my arrival was just a little bit different. First of all, I came through like every other passenger, and British Airways had lost my luggage. And so I sat there for about half an hour, and nobody could find the luggage, and my sister finally said, "Come on, let's go." And she was driving a little Volkswagen Beetle. It was already about 10 years old back then. Eventually it would break down in front of Uhuru Park, and some Joakalis would have to come and fix it. And I spent the month mostly just traveling, walking through the city center and having tea and samosas and meeting people and talking to them. So it was a very personal journey that I went through. And it didn't have all the hype and hoopla that this visit has. This time out, I'm obviously not coming here just as a private citizen, but also as a United States Senator. And so I have a different role to play. And part of my role is to communicate how much the American people appreciate the Kenyan people and how much they value the partnership that the United States has with Kenya.
When you were in South Africa, you spoke urging President Mbeki to impress upon Robert Mugabe for democratic transition in the continent.
Well, I was asked specifically about the situation in Zimbabwe and what advice I would give to President Mbeki during my visit. And I suggested, look, I don't presume to know more about Zimbabwe than Mbeki does. Obviously, he's a neighbor. He lives with that neighbor on a day-to-day basis, and what happens in Zimbabwe deeply affects what happens in South Africa. I can say that my impression is that Zimbabwe has been ill-served by Mugabe's reign, particularly over the last several years. That the country is doing poorly as a consequence of mismanagement by that government, that human rights have been violated in many instances, and that that it is important for Africans to speak out when African leaders are not respecting human rights or ensuring that progress and development is happening at the grassroots level. So that's my firm belief. I think that there's a tendency, which is understandable given the history of colonialism, to not want to speak out against fellow Africans and to be protective of even some of the mismanagement or corruption that takes place. And I think we've moved beyond that point. I think the time is now where we have to understand that nobody in Africa wants to be bullied. Nobody in Africa wants to see the products of their labor expropriated by a government that is not representing them properly. Nobody wants to be tortured or jailed because they're speaking their mind. Nobody wants to have to pay a bribe in order to get a business or get a job or just go about their daily business. And it's incumbent upon us when we see those things happening to speak up. Now, we've got to speak out when the West or developed countries misbehave as well. I think ultimately that kind of honesty will improve governance everywhere.
Yes, sir. I'd like you to confirm that and what you intended to go and do in Sudan, and your opinion about the comprehensive peace process and its implementation.
Right. Here's what happened, as I understand it, and I've got some staff here who can correct me if I'm wrong. We had been delayed repeatedly in terms of getting our visa from the Sudanese government. We submitted it probably a month ahead of time, 6 weeks ahead of time. They continued to delay. I think they made a public statement that they were concerned that Senator Obama was biased against them, and so they weren't sure whether it would be useful for me to visit. If I'm not mistaken, they granted our visa the day before we left. Obviously, at that point, we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to try to go to Sudan or change our plans, which is what we did, to go to Chad, where we'll have the opportunity to meet and talk with some of the refugees from Darfur. My general view is that, first of all, I want to thank the Kenyan government and the Kenyan people for the useful role that they played in negotiating the North-South Agreement. And that, I think, has been a wonderful contribution and an example of the role that Kenya as a regional power can play in helping to broker and resolve conflicts throughout the region. The peace settlement or peace agreement in Abuja between some of the rebel factions in Khartoum does not seem to have yielded meaningful results over the last several months, in part because there has not been a UN protective force in place that can supplement what the AU forces are doing. Now, the AU has been a terrific initial effort, and they have saved lives and they've protected people as a consequence of their presence, but they haven't had much capacity yet in terms of boots, Black Hawks, supplies. Their mandate has been limited and restricted in terms of how they can engage. And so as a consequence, where the AU forces have been present, it's been helpful. But this is a huge country and you only have 7,000 troops. What happens then is that as soon as the AU forces are gone, you're starting to see women getting raped when they're collecting firewood, men being killed, and so on. And so my understanding is that the situation has been deteriorating over the last several weeks. We are on the verge of an enormous humanitarian crisis if things completely collapse there, and it becomes a situation where the international aid community can no longer operate. So we've got to have a sense of urgency about getting peacekeeping forces in there. Unfortunately, you know, the world has been distracted.
And you must have been following the current political atmosphere in the country, the developments that are going on. What's your comment on that?